Happy Friday! Hi out there, everyone in internet land. Nice to virtually see you. I'm Renee Di Cherri. I'm the marketing manager here for drawing and painting. And it's super important to me because I'm an artist too and I love to draw. And this series is called Better Know a Brush. And I couldn't be more excited today because I've got the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Webster with me. And he is the inspiration for this series. We made it specifically so he could share his tidbits with you. Now, a little bit about brushes. There's no right or wrong way to use them in your artwork, but the ways that you can control them, the way that you refine them, and your selections can help you understand how to make more successful art. And that's what we're all about. So, Kyle, you have a long history with brushes.
Yes.
You are known for your brushes. So
Yeah.
why don't you tell the people a little bit of background about how that happened?
Well, it came about out of necessity is the mother of invention, as they say.
Yes,
and
it
when I
is.
was working as a graphic designer, we were the agency of record for Krispy Kreme donuts, which I'm sure some of you might like to eat from time to time.
Oh my
Hot off the
goodness.
line, delicious. And the CEO at the time had this nice collection of folk art. It was acrylic paintings on wood panel, and he had them at his house and invited us over. And as inspiration for illustrations for their annual report that year,
Yeah.
he said, I want to have a series of 8 illustrations made like this.
Cool.
And
That's
oh,
a
and-
cool
oh,
CEO, actually.
Very
Like,
cool. The part that wasn't so cool, he said, and also, by the way, we need these in 2 weeks.
Oh.
And so we went back to the office, and I was sitting there with my boss at the time, John Walker, just looking over this request, and I said, I think I could figure out a way to do this in Photoshop. And I sat down and spent the entire day just learning about the Photoshop brush engine. This was back in 2003.
Yep.
So I think it was Photoshop 7 or something. I don't remember what it was.
Nice, yeah.
But you could, at the time, you could already do textures and you could, make different stamp shapes and everything. And so what we did was we faked it. We made these illustrations
Wow.
and we made the deadline.
Yeah.
And we didn't tell the CEO. We got it done. He loved the illustrations. We got
Yeah.
it printed. And when it was all said and done, he said, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to buy some of those originals.
Wow.
And that's when we had to come clean and say, well, if you want a bunch of ones and zeros, you can have them. But so that was really cool because that experience then led me down the path to start, in any free time I had at the design firm, I would always start making brushes and slowly started using those in more projects for the agency and for posters and things like that. And that
So
also led me to
cool.
play with different styles. And then when my freelance career was taking off, I was constantly playing with styles as well, using different brushes, and it just became a bit of an obsession.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for years and years, I was doing it for myself.
Right.
And friends kept asking to borrow them, and I got to thank Corey Godby, an illustrator in South Carolina.
Thank
who
you,
was-
Corey.
Yes, Corey's amazing. Who was one of the first people to suggest that I maybe consider selling them.
Right.
And he was also the person who suggested Gumroad, the brilliant creation of Sahil Lavinia, if you don't know him.
Yeah.
And that was how it all came about. And then
That's incredible because now you are like Adobe lore. Like people know you for your brushes and we're all better for it, honestly. And you might wonder what you're looking at right here. This is the brand new hotness from Adobe for drawing and painting. We just recently released the name. It used to be known as Project Gemini. Now it's Adobe Fresco. And before you get in, I do want to let the lovely, beautiful people in the chat, hello chat, I see you're all out there having a good time. Don't forget to log in because you could win 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule today. We're going to have a chat and win. Yes, here is the beautiful background and you can make your own custom stickers, anything you want. All right, so Adobe Fresco, Kyle.
yes.
Let's get into this. It's all about the brushes in Fresco. It's
Yeah.
all about the brushes.
Yeah, it's cool because this is the first app we've made where we have 3 different categories of brush in the same app.
Yep.
So right now I'm at my home screen and it just shows me my recently used documents, things I was working on.
Yeah.
Some of which I can't show because it's actually, it's client work, it's secret stuff, but you could also go to your cloud documents, which is great. So, things that I've worked on, either from Photoshop or wherever, I can just access them here, which is wonderful.
It's so nice.
Yeah. So just to keep things simple, I'll just go ahead and create a new document. And I think what we'll do is we'll walk through. We have only a limited amount of time here. We only have an hour.
Only an hour to dig into these
Yeah.
brushes, and so many brushes.
There's a lot. So I thought it'd be fun to just showcase what we have in terms of the categories.
Yep.
I won't spend a lot of time on the interface and everything because one of the beautiful things about Fresco is that it's extremely approachable. I mean, if you open the app and just start drawing, you're good to go. It's not like you have to sort of figure out where things are. But having said that, things are customizable, and if anybody saw the demo at Max last year, you already know this. But you do have the option to, for example, my first brush that I've selected here is, these are Photoshop brushes or raster brushes, right?
Yeah.
And we have different categories of brushes in here, and these are imported from Photoshop. I also can import other brushes from my CC libraries, and I've got a bunch of those in here.
Oh, cool. They just show up.
Yep, they just show up like this. Boom. You
Wow.
make a library, there it is. Which is great. And of course you can organize these and delete what you don't want, things like that.
Ah, nice.
We also have favorite brushes, so you can favorite a brush and then have a little category of favorites for
that's
things you use all the time.
That's a lot of brushes in there, you know? Like,
Oh, it's tons, yeah.
like how
yeah.
are you even going to get through all those brushes?
Well, for me, it's not a problem because, I mean, when I was working on the brushes at home and was building all these things, I had all 1,500, 1,600 brushes always loaded at all times. And I was really good at just scrolling through to what I needed to get because I knew the names of them.
Muscle memory.
Yeah, like for every brush I created, everyone was like a little special baby. I knew everyone by name. I knew exactly how they behaved and where to find them. And so for me, it's not a problem. But for most people, you don't want to be scrolling through hundreds of brushes every
Totally.
time you want to work. So
Not really.
favorites are a nice feature.
They are a nice feature. Jonathan wanted to know about which iPads Fresco was going to run on. And what I remember hearing from the dev team is that you really want an Apple Pencil. So it's not really about only iPad Pro. It's about just making sure you have that Apple Pencil so you have that sensitivity of drawing your strokes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's nice about the Apple Pencil is the taper from the barrel down to the tip because it makes it possible for you to really take advantage of tilt. And I'll demonstrate that with the pencil. So just to
Yes,
start really
please.
quickly, we have in the sketching category the default pencil for Gemini. And the default pencil for Gemini has been redesigned based on a pencil that we had experimented with in Adobe Photoshop Sketch.
Oh yeah, that was a great pencil too.
It was pretty good, but I gotta say, we had to step it up and make it a little bit, I'm very picky with this stuff, and so I worked with a really great group of engineers here, one in particular who spent a lot of time on it named Paul, and he really nailed it. And what I like about it is that I can, of course, hold my regular grip if I were writing or drawing and doing detail work, and just make faint lines all the way down to darker lines and so on and so forth. That's great. But
And it's
when
got
I'm,
that nice texture, like it really...
I should zoom in.
Yeah,
Even though
zoom
we're
in,
gonna
let's
zoom
see
in
that.
quite a bit here, but hopefully you can see this lovely.
You could trick me. You could tell me that was a real pencil, and I would think it was. Yeah.
I'll make that a little smaller. Yeah, we're zoomed in at 300. I mean, look, now we're going up to the pixel level here.
Yeah. You can see all the little dots.
Look how far you can zoom in
Wow.
Fresco. This is ridiculous.
We just need a pixel
can't even
grid,
see- yeah,
and you
let
can
me
make
make
pixel
it-
art.
You can literally, we're at 9,000% here. Okay, so let's zoom back out to something a little more reasonable.
Yeah, tell me why this brush is special.
Right, here's why. So when I teach portraiture at the School of the Arts in North Carolina, I'm using a charcoal pencil most of the time. And when I'm starting my drawings, I use what I call the screwdriver grip.
Oh.
Right, I don't draw like this because
Keep
I'm
it loose.
drawing looser and a larger scale and for bigger shapes. And so I like that with this pencil. When I do that, you can see that I'm getting a slightly wider mark. It's because I'm drawing with a little bit of the side of the brush, right?
Yeah.
So, and then as I come in and get more vertical, it's going to get thinner, of course.
It changes the shape, just like a real pencil.
Yeah, so if I want to do some shading, just grab it like this and start building up tone.
Wow. And
Like
it's
so.
so light in the beginning, you cannot even see it.
No,
you
it's
know?
very
Like,
faint. The range that you get of values is literally 0 to 100, and you're not going to struggle to get those lower values. And what's great is you can also control the flow of the pencil. So any brush you want to control the flow, there's a little flow slider right here. So I usually have it set pretty low. If I crank it all the way up to 100, though, you'll see that I very quickly jump up to a darker value. So if you want to do more like kind of a charcoal look, you can go ahead and do that.
quicker. And flow, again, can you remind the people out there, flow versus opacity?
Yes, sure. Opacity is if you have a set opacity, then no matter how hard you press with your stylus for whatever brush you're using, you can't move past that opacity until you lift it again and then start drawing again.
Because it's a new stroke.
Exactly. Now with flow, it's controlling the rate at which the pigment is, I'm saying pigment,
Pixel
using
pigment.
traditional vocabulary here, but the rate at which it's flowing out of the tool that you're drawing with. So if you're using a paintbrush, the paint is going to flow more slowly, more gradually out of the bristles to get down and be deposited on the canvas, right?
Yeah, that makes
Same
sense.
with graphite. So by controlling the flow and lowering it, you have more time to build up to your full range of value to 100 or to black, so to speak, right? If you're going from white to black, 0 to 100.
Yep.
And so that's how flow works. And so I like being able to control that with a pencil because I can do my sketching and I can keep that flow pretty low,
Right.
And do some nice light stuff. And I can get a very fine point just by holding the pencil at more of a perpendicular angle. And I hope this, I don't know if it's showing up.
I'm not sure that it's showing up.
Faint, so and I'm draw a little darker
it's
than
kind
I
of a bummer
would.
Because over here you can see, like I can see how gorgeous and light these little flecks are, and you
very,
almost
very
can't
faint.
see it. So you might want to draw a little bit harder, but it's
do that.
beautiful.
I'll also show that this does, of course, respond to the rotation of the stylus.
Really?
Like a real pencil.
Wow.
So, for example, if I want to make sure that I'm doing some highlighting, or excuse me, some shading that's vertical like this, if I hold it this way and shade, I'm going to get those strokes showing up in that direction, right? But I can, of course, rotate it and go the other way and do this, and I can go thin to thick, all based on tilt and not on pressure.
Wow.
So I can get light pressure to make a light mark that is wide, light pressure to make a light mark that is narrow, and so on.
We're going to put paper out of business with this app, I feel like.
Well, this pencil is great, and they spent a lot of hours working on this, and we spent a lot of time refining it. And I'm not going to go into too much detail and bore everybody with the technical details, but the texture is actually randomly generated, which is a first thing. This is a first for us. Yeah, normally we use texture files. We use files that
it's
are
like a
fixed.
bitmap, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This doesn't work that way. It's a special invention from the scientists at Adobe. So, well done them. So yes, these are the pixel brushes. That's the pencil, and I could probably do a little drawing with it later. But I do want to cover some other ground.
Yep.
So those of you who are fans of Adobe Photoshop Sketch, we still included our pen that responds to velocity.
Oh,
so
great,
people really like sketching with that and taking notes and doing things like that. So that's still in there. And if you haven't seen it before, the way it works is it's a nice sort of, I would call it like a technical pen kind of feeling.
Yep.
But what's cool is if you are moving slowly, okay, and then zip and go faster, you can see that the line gets more narrow.
Just like a real ballpoint, because it stresses. It can't like get that ink out fast enough.
And because of the flow of the ink being a consistent thing, the more ground you cover in a shorter amount of time, the less ink gets deposited. Yep. So I can do stuff like this, and the velocity controls. It's really lovely.
Yeah.
So that's also in there as well because people love that. Now we'll move on to Photoshop brushes. So of course, I've imported just a whole bunch of brushes I use all the time.
Of course.
As well as just fun little special effects brushes and things like that. And there are categories that, make sense. So the basic brushes are things that I, when I'm doing pure flat color stuff or gradation stuff, I'm going to use the brushes that we use that are default brushes for Photoshop.
Yep.
You're all going to be familiar with those, hard, round, and so on.
Yep.
I'll skip over all that because we're all familiar with that. But for comics, for example, I wanted to include things like cross-hatching brushes.
These are
which
so
are just
beautiful.
So fun.
And these just I see you use these in your art, and I just kind of associate you with those cross-hatching.
Really?
Yeah, honestly.
So what I like to do is things, and here's what's great about having selections as well, is I could take something like an ink brush and just make a shape. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I would like to grab my cross-hatching and do a little bit of tone to kind of do this.
And immediately you've got this beautiful shading.
Yeah. And then, because of selections being what they are, I don't care if I color outside the lines, because I can just come in with the lasso tool and bye-bye. Just get rid of all that.
Oh, that's
Erase,
so nice.
deselect.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, this is lovely.
It is.
All right, so moving on.
It's the most beautiful potato I've ever seen.
Isn't that a great potato?
It's a great potato, guys.
All right, but anyway, I added a bunch of halftone brushes in there. People love the halftones.
These blow my mind. I don't know how you make these. And I actually
3 years.
Don't tell me, because I just want to be excited by them for the rest of my life. But how do these work?
Yeah, it's by cheating. I had to cheat the Photoshop brush engine to figure out a workaround to make it so that you could use pressure to control the density of the halftones. So people really love those, and I put some of them in this comics category for myself that I use more often than not, right? So plenty of those. Basically, any Photoshop brush that you like and that you use regularly, you can just import it in here. And the best thing about it is that we spent months making sure that the feel of drawing with them is identical to the experience of drawing, say, on a Wacom tablet when you're working on your desktop.
Yep.
And we wanted to make sure that it translated really smoothly, so that if you open a document you've been working on in Photoshop, maybe on your desktop, right? Although of course you could be working on it on your iPad soon, as we all know. Then you could bring it to Gemini, have your brushes ready to go, and you wouldn't have to be adjusting the way you had to control the brush.
That's important, you know? We really want you to feel like you're in an app that's exactly the same, you know? So you can just pick up and keep drawing. That it's not even like you're like, oh, I have to change my brushes or my workflow or my style or anything.
No, we don't want any of that. We want this process to be smooth and painless.
Yep.
And so, of course, there's inks that I like to draw with, so, you know.
I love these spotty inks that you've got.
Yeah, this is like the blotty, spotty, whatever you want to call it.
So good.
It's all really fun. Do a little face here. And some of these, you know, these were really just inspired by advertising drawings and things like that from basically the 60s, I would say.
Yeah.
50s and 60s. In fact, recently I was at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and I saw, and by the way, I have to confess something, never been a big fan of Andy Warhol. Don't come at me, folks. But I just want to say,
taste. It's just taste. It's just preference.
Never liked it. Didn't like the silk screens. Didn't like the photographs. It did nothing for me. And at the Museum of Modern Art here in San Francisco, they had this huge collection of his drawings from when he was doing commercial art, his advertising art, and I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
Because it was this kind of
like beautiful
look.
line work.
Yeah, and it was all the sketchy, you know, kind of stuff, and he had these figures that were sort of drawn kind of naive, you know, almost like is it Saul Steinberg? I'm thinking no, there's another artist. Anyway. But that kind of look that was popular, and you can do that with this brush, right? These little lines.
You totally can. And I don't mean to be also controversial, but I love production art. I don't love art for art's sake. And I think maybe that's part of it.
Yeah,
if
that's
I'm
part
gonna
of
have
it.
to like assume, like Andy Warhol's art for production had more character.
Yeah, it did. So anyway, we agree on this.
We do.
And you know the brayer stuff. I just use this to death, so I thought I had to have it in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love the cloud brushes. I know we're not there yet, but the FX section is like my favorite. It's my favorite. So I'll let you get to that. But
yeah, and so while I'm doing this, I thought it'd be fun to demonstrate how we use our touch modifier.
Oh yes, please.
So we have a touch modifier, which is this little circle in the bottom left corner of the screen, and I'm going to move it now so you can see that it's moving across the screen. All right, so what this is a touch modifier, and you'll notice that up here in the top right corner, it tells me what its function is. It says eraser.
Oh yeah.
And what's awesome about this is, if any of you in Photoshop use the clear mode for your brushes, it's a way of turning any Photoshop brush into an eraser, right?
Okay, cool.
But we now have made this into a one-stop thing where you could be drawing, like I am with this brush here, hold down the touch modifier and immediately start erasing with exactly the same brush, retaining all the brush properties of that.
Nice.
Right? Then come back over it. Build up some nice texture.
And
right?
that gives you more variation because that stamp is going over it and it's like actually making it more random.
Absolutely. You know, come back over and lighten a little bit more.
Man, that's amazing.
So if there's a certain brush you like using and you want to make sure that when you're erasing with that brush, you don't have suddenly like a hard shape like that, which doesn't make sense, right?
It doesn't feel right for that situation.
What I could do is, you know, take my brush and just size it down.
Yeah.
Hold down the touch modifier. And then erase that way, so I'm still getting some of that texture in there.
You totally are. You know, and Melanie wants to know where she can get these brushes, and she can actually get a lot of them today out of Photoshop.
Yeah.
If you hop to my screen, I've got it open actually in Photoshop. If you're in the brush panel, you've got the brush panel open, and there's this little drop-down menu. And I'll show you that
to Renee's screen
in
so
just
people
a
can see
section.
this?
Yeah, we'll switch. And what you can do is actually, all you gotta do is scroll all the way down here to get more brushes, and you can get a lot of the brushes that are live today in Fresco, you'll be able to get them in Photoshop. And then when Fresco releases, sometime later this year, then you can use them in Fresco as well.
Tons and tons and tons and tons and tons.
That's it for me. Let's go back to Kyle's beautiful work that he's gonna
Well, you mentioned FX brushes, so I thought, you know, I'd just jump in there. Why not?
They're my favorite, the clouds, the stars, the ink spots.
So here, let's do that.
Can't get enough of them, honestly.
We'll just fill our layer with some blue for sky, and I think I'll use, this is one of my favorites, a color fill brush, and I'm gonna grab a slightly darker blue, there we go, and just crank that up, and I'm going to paint in a little gradation here of color. So up at the top, it's a little darker.
And this looks like the watercolor brushes to me, and I know we haven't even gotten into those
we haven't
yet.
gotten there. That's why, and they play nicely together.
They've got like this sort of.
So there's a little sky, okay. And then why don't we take the FX brushes? We'll get one of the clouds. Let's see here. Cloud soft, cloud scattered. I think I'll use the cloud soft brush. Use some white. And I made a new layer. And now I'm just gonna populate this sky.
Wow. Oof,
with some clouds.
So good.
How nice is that?
And this reminds me of your story that you told where it's like, oh, I've got to make all these images. How do I do it quickly?
Yeah,
How do I do it easily?
Yeah.
Because you just made a sky in literally 30 seconds.
Yeah, and how does that look, folks?
It looks pretty good.
I think it's pretty fun. I mean, that was what, 10 seconds?
Maybe.
We could do a little more refinement, right? We could spend some more time on it, but
could.
just to prove the point that brushes do make a difference, right?
Yeah, they do.
It's super fun.
So you've got a question from
yes,
Tima. Tima
yes.
wanted to know, when you make these brushes, like you've got the FX and the different sort of categories.
Yeah.
Do you really go for like a honed look, or is it sometimes just a happy accident?
Both.
Both?
Oh yeah. Half the time I'll try to be making something, and then I'll accidentally make something totally cool and weird, and I immediately save it for later so I can play with it and figure out what the point of it is.
Just tuck that away for later.
Yeah. For every one brush I make, like 4 or 5 accidental brushes usually come out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which is how the halftone brushes happened. It was an accident. I was trying to make something else.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Man.
And then I stumbled on the secret, and I said, "Oop, there it is."
Is the secret, the brush secrets.
In the FX course, we also have all kinds of fun things like spatter.
Spatter's
spatter,
good.
so boom. Right,
Love that brush.
And what I like about this is I can use the modifier then, and immediately erase with that
Knock
spatter.
it back.
Yeah, so I can control it, or really in this case, it's about lack of control. I think that's kind of what's fun about this.
That is.
Go ahead and then grab a different spatter brush. So let's see here.
Because you've got 2 of them in Fresco here.
I think I loaded 3. Look, there are 4
wow.
even. There's this guy. And I can just erase away a little bit. So yeah, you want to make a little starscape or something like that for some sci-fi illustration,
Easy.
just bang it out with those few
Easy peasy.
brushes.
And are these brushes available in your other sets today?
Oh yeah, these are all from existing.
Okay, so where do we
sets
get the cloud or the spatter?
Those would be in the concept brush set.
Concept brush
Yeah,
set.
the concept brush set has clouds, it has tons of spatter, it has leaf brushes. In fact, I included some leaf brushes in here.
Cool.
That take advantage of color dynamics, which of course work great in Fresco. We talked about color dynamics in yesterday's stream, so if you want to jump back and check that out, it's worthwhile.
Color dynamics are so important, and I can see it working there. You've
I
got
don't know
like
if
some
other people
variation.
can see out there. Yeah, it's like there's a slight variation in color here. Anyway, so these are some of the foliage brushes that I included. There's another one in here which you will see that has a leafy line, and this definitely has a pretty noticeable difference in the color.
Nice.
If I zoom in, you'll see this green is slightly more saturated and cooler than this one, which is warmer.
Yeah.
Right? And these can go really big, folks. So, I mean...
Wow. And I love the character that they have with just a little kind of, it feels like a stamp or a woodcut, and that's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, a lot of the brushes I make, I try to make them have some irregularities or some sort of natural texture to them or something so they don't feel too sharp.
Yeah.
Of course, I make other tools that are a little cleaner, so to speak, because people want to be able to draw with both. But I am interested in that kind of thing.
I mean, that's what makes it fun with your brushes, is the not looking digital.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. We even have things like being able to control, we have a smoke brush here, and if you use the stylus and apply pressure, one of the things I love about the Photoshop brush engine is that pressure doesn't just control size, and it doesn't just control the effect of, say, scattering or something like that, right? It also can affect the direction of the brush, which is very weird. Yeah, but it can lead to things like this. So if I want to do a wisp of smoke, as
oh wow,
what's happening is those directional changes are coming from me applying more or less pressure. Yeah, and so what I like to do is this kind of thing where it's like a little wispy smoke thing, and then I'll come back over it and use different amounts of pressure as I go through.
Wow.
Like that, and so hey folks, don't smoke, it's not good for you. But what I like to do is, let me just delete this, goodbye. And I've done this before, this little demonstration, but is just take a little ink brush like that Blotty ink, or maybe the Blake. I love the Blake.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't decide, maybe I'll, too many choices. I'll use the wet ink brush, yeah. And just come in here, there's a little,
Yeah, somebody in the chat, Kevin Schneider says that, clients don't need artists anymore because they're going to have these brushes. And it's,
That's not true.
No, Kyle makes it look easy, but trust me, it does take some finesse. And Kyle makes it look easy because he uses them all the time. Kyle knows these brushes, and he knows which ones are going to give him exactly the look he wants.
Yes. So there, terrible habit, but fun to draw, right? Okay.
As a funny aside, YouTube thinks I'm in danger of smoking. I always get the truth ads, like,
what?
Yeah, and I'm like, I swear I'll never smoke, YouTube. Like, I don't know, the algorithm is convinced that I am at risk, and I am not, I swear. So we only have about 3 minutes till our chat and win.
Oh,
so
okay,
I just
let me
wanna
do something really quick that's going to just be like a weird... Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's totally fine. Just don't forget to log in if you're chatting with us today, because you could win 100 free stickers from Sticker Mule, and that's going to be custom. Anything you want to make as a sticker, you can make. And then that's your little cue, Kyle, that we're about halfway through our segment.
Perfect. That's going to give me half the time to just talk about live brushes and vector brushes.
And vector.
But what I was going to do, just kind of quickly and weird, I thought, what the heck, since I'm already here, and I just made these lines, I just thought I'd make some of them a little wet.
Ooh. Oh my goodness, that's with the watercolor?
Yeah.
Nice. And you're just bleeding that, like you're bleeding ink with water.
This is what you can't do anywhere else, folks. This is so incredibly fun.
You're not even going to be able to do this in Photoshop, guys.
This is insane.
Not to be cruel to Photoshop, but like the live brushes will only be in Gemini.
These are
Photoshop.
So I'm just like kind of making it all bleed and go all over the place. So why don't we just jump in? Should we do that? I mean,
go
should
ahead.
I skip over the other Photoshop stuff?
You can. We
got a minute left, right? 2 minutes?
2 minutes until chat. Why don't you stick with Pixel and then we'll get into it after.
I just can't help myself. It's too
I know.
fun.
They're really fun.
So speaking of color dynamics, of course, we have ways to very quickly and easily fill in a background or whatever. And I have this brush, which was part of the summer brush set release, I think, from last year, or maybe it was the winter brushes. I can't remember which. Don't forget, every quarter, roughly,
new brushes.
Yeah, 20 to 25 brushes are free for all the CC folks out there to just play with.
So it's not like we bought Kyle's brushes and then we're like, yeah, whatever, goodbye. No, Kyle is always updating brushes for you subscribers.
So I like this one because, again, you're going to get that variation in color.
So good.
So if you want to quickly make a little background for something, I just grab this and go. So I renamed this for myself as a Cezanne brush, but the original name was it was 1960s background brush is what it was called.
I can see that.
I believe it was in the summer set from last summer.
So it's got that vibe.
Yeah, it could be winter.
Yeah.
Somebody help me out in the chat if you're familiar with my brushes.
Anybody in the chat familiar? Probably not as familiar as
Maybe
Kyle
not.
is.
So, so that's a quick, instead of just having it just be one color, I love being able to have this variety.
Yeah, and it's so fast. Again, that was like a 10-second maneuver there, and we've got a gorgeous background.
Yeah, and I can always pop over to a different Cezanne and then add some different texture in there. Yeah. These are inspired by that Impressionist brush set that I made about 2 years ago.
That's cool.
And I secretly wanted to use this brush set as a sort of a launching off point for making a custom set of brushes specifically for French Impressionists in the same way that we had done the Edvard Munch brushes.
Yes, those were so cool.
Thank you. I thought it would be a fun project for everybody to have those brushes and try to make some cool Impressionist art with them.
It is a cool idea.
And have a contest like we did last time.
Well, I mean, we can easily do that.
Still thinking
we'll
about
make
it.
Happen.
Still thinking about
we'll
it.
make it happen, Kyle.
Yeah.
Well, so if you're just joining us, this is Adobe Fresco. It used to be called Project Gemini. That was our code word. And now we have just announced the name. It's not out yet, but it will be out sometime this year. And we're just showing you a little bit about it. And oh my goodness, there's a brush rain. You see the brush rain?
Oh my gosh, it's raining brushes.
It's raining brushes. And that is your clue to chat and win. Now, what should we ask them to chat about? Their favorite brushes? They can say anything they want.
Call out a brush or maybe
call out your favorite brush or your favorite parameter. How nerdy is that?
Oh, that's really bad. Scatter, size jitter.
Yeah.
Dual brush.
Call it out. But actually, it doesn't matter what you chat. Anything is fine, and you might win 100 free stickers.
Someone's got to throw in their color dynamics.
While we're doing this, I just want to say hi to Tony. I saw Tony in the chat. I also saw a friend of mine, John, in the chat. I just want to say hello and thank you for tuning in. I also saw Laura from the Fresco team. Nice to see Laura watching.
Hey, Laura.
Yes. So in a few minutes, the AI that controls Adobe will give us a name for who has won. It will show up behind us now. And our winner is...
Who's it?
Tony helps. Tony! My buddy Tony won. Good job, Tony.
All
Tony
right,
wins
Tony.
100 free stickers. I want one of your stickers. Actually, I grabbed some of those stickers from, is it Society 6 or Redbubble? Gosh, now they're competitors, and I'm a terrible person for saying them in the same sentence. But Tony had some really cool asteroid stickers he drew in Fresco. And I got
Oh,
those.
cool.
Yeah, they're sweet. So give me some more stickers, Tony, and congratulations. All right.
How come I didn't get any stickers?
Aw, well, I could get you some. I'll buy you some stickers, Kyle. Oh my gosh, look at this. This is beautiful.
This is one of the rake brushes, and again, taking advantage of the pressure, changing the direction of the brush. It's the only way you could get these kind of weird effects. There's no other way. So, you know, I'm madly in love with the Photoshop brush engine, which is why I'm so glad it's supported so well in Fresco here, because also, I have to say, everything's so fast.
Yeah.
It's so fast.
There's
lag.
no lag at all. The entire time you've been drawing, you had that big sort of wash in the background, and not even a
it's
touch
just
of lag.
zippy, so that's pretty cool. And I'm sure we have to also give some credit there to Apple for the hardware. I mean, it's pretty impressive. All right, so
is it live
should we
time?
time? Yeah, okay, we're gonna do it. Here we go, live brushes. This is the new category of brushes that these brilliant scientists have been working on for years, literally. And I've been really excited to be a part of helping to finesse some of the behaviors and things like that, along with many other people here at Adobe and also outside of Adobe, because we've been working with a group of artists who've helped us to really make things look good. So
The Gemini 10.
yes, and so what I'm going to demonstrate here, I want to say this is actually still, believe it or not, a little bit of a work in progress. Like we're right towards the end, but it's great. So why don't we just check them out? Also, we didn't even talk about this, but you may notice this little group of colors here at the bottom of the screen. It says recent. So we keep a color history for everybody.
Ugh, it's so helpful.
And it is so helpful, especially when I'm in a jam and I'm working on something and I can't remember all the colors I used. And then when you go and mix colors and do things like that, they change, yeah.
Yep.
So I can go back to those pure hues that I had selected earlier by using the color history.
It's everything. And I even see opacity in there because you were using just nothing to like do the water. And
It will remember
it'll
everything.
remember your opacity of the color.
Yeah, very cool and very useful when you're doing oils, which I'll show you because you can be doing glazes, things like that, and then you want to remember exactly what you had, so you go back to that.
That's great.
So for the watercolors, we have a different number of brushes here. I'm going to start with the Watercolor Wash Soft, which kind of looks like what you'd expect, right? It's soft and watercolory. And I think I'll change my color to a blue because it's just a lovely color. Shows up well on screen, and I know that what I'm seeing on my screen here might be not quite as
Tim was saying it's okay. I think
Okay.
it's maybe just the monitor that we're looking at.
Okay, never mind
So
then.
that's good. It's good. Thank you, Tim, for that tip.
So why don't we just have some fun? I've got the water slider cranked all the way up to 100, and we wanted to keep this as simple as possible so people could paint quickly without doing a bunch of fidgeting with sliders and this and that. So all we have is a slider for how much water you use. Simple, right? And then the flow of the paint. And the size, right?
And that's all we got.
So size you already know, flow you already know. The only thing we've added here is the water.
Okay.
And it just makes it so much easier, right?
Yeah.
So let's just do that. So I'm just gonna simply paint a little bit of color here. And I'm using light pressure.
Yeah.
So pressure also controls the depositing of the paint, right?
Okay.
But flow, in addition to pressure, makes it really easy for me to have a ton of control.
And you can see it kind of like just...
I'll zoom in a little
Yeah,
bit.
if you zoom in a little bit, you can kind of see the way that the watercolor bleeds. Just like it's really moving with water.
Look at that. Oh my gosh. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Tell us in the chat if this is coming through clearly. And then I want to do a nice gradation to this lighter blue. And because I have a ton of water up there, right?
Yeah.
It's going to mix really easily and just spread, and it's going to pull that darker color in.
And it's blending without you even having to do any blending work.
No, not at all. No, I'm just painting like I would with regular watercolor, wet into wet.
Wow. That's
Same technique I would
amazing.
use on paper. Okay?
Yeah.
Pull it, pull it, pull it. And there it goes.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And it changes as it goes along. Like, I keep looking at it and it's different.
I want more color up here. I can just pull that in.
Can really see it with the dark.
There it goes.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and even the edge, if you look at it, because this is the soft brush,
Yeah.
the edge is really soft up here, and we've got a little bit of what you would call like a cauliflower effect here.
Yeah.
And then a little pooling of the paint. All these physics and all these things have been worked on tirelessly by these engineers, and they've done just a beautiful job. I'm so amazed.
And if I understand it, there's literally like Adobe engineers in the basement of San Jose playing with watercolors, like literally with real watercolors.
There are, in fact, yeah, we had a lot of meetings where we used real world materials to just study and see what they do, and do a little wet into wet, do wet on dry, and study all these behaviors so that we could replicate them well. And the result is pretty fantastic. Now, what I like about this is not only can I get these watercolor effects, but I'm still in a digital environment.
Right.
So I can undo.
Ugh.
I mean, this is ridiculous. So
can you redo too?
You want to go back? Of course. You want to redo? Just redo, 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 redo.
That's crazy.
And so to have this sort of forward and backward thing with live brushes is bananas. So I think I'll grab a little yellow.
Yeah, that's a beautiful gradient. And do the watercolors ever dry? Someone asked in the chat.
Guess what? I could save this file now. Go away for 2 months, come back and open it, and they're still wet. If I want them to dry, I could dry them.
Okay.
But what I choose to do is I leave my wet layers wet.
Yeah.
And let's say I want them to be dry and I want to continue painting watercolor on top of watercolor, like we all do. Usually you let them dry and then you continue. All I do is make a new layer.
Oh, of course, make a new layer. It won't affect it.
No, this is much more flexible process.
Wow, it's literally real watercolors in a digital environment.
In a digital environment. And you can also do crazy things like this. I don't want this part. I think I want to move it. So just move your watercolors.
Oh my gosh. This is truly
And that opens up a whole
crazy.
world of possibilities, because with the selection tools. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, now that I've just done this, which is a weird thing to do, right? but for some reason I wanted to retain the look of the watercolors for these shapes.
Right.
I could, of course, just grab the brush and select, a color here on the edge, make a smaller brush, and then just like...
Oh yeah, just give it a little bit.
Just do that.
Or maybe even just with no color, too.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can just suck that down to pretty much nothing.
And sort of get that water effect on the edge.
And then just wet it.
That's great.
Yep. And so then you take care of that whole problem of, oh no, now I've got this hard edge I don't want, So there, just soften it. And it's as simple as that.
So there's a couple different watercolor brushes in there. Do you have any sort of like thoughts about when to use which one, or?
So if you're doing more of a flat wash, then we have this brush. It says watercolor wash flat.
Yeah.
So don't worry.
Aptly named.
So a lot of the brushes I had made in Photoshop have crazy names. We thought, let's not do that for the live brushes. So let's make things really clear and easy for people to understand.
Smart.
And that's what we're doing. And then here's a fun one, this wet spatter. So if I take the spatter brush, I can do things like that, and you'll see that it actually, it's like spatter, but with water as well. Wow. So you can do pretty cool stuff with this.
That's so great.
Yeah, and I like to actually use white, because even though normally you wouldn't be able to do this, you would have to in order to do this, you would have to be...
Like mask or something.
All kinds of,
I don't even know.
I can lighten...
Oh, wow.
Stuff.
That's great. That's a beautiful speckle,
Yeah,
too.
and what you get is kind of the effect of, if anybody's ever used salt with watercolors, this is kind of what you get, or alcohol. So for all the pure watercolorists out there, here's how you would replicate that look. And the less water I use, then the sharper it's going to be, right?
Oh, that's
And so
beautiful.
I love this little, look at these patterns, these crystallization sort of things.
Real.
It's just like watercolor with salt.
It's totally real. So have you ever run into a layer limit? We've got some people asking about layers. Like, okay, well, you can use watercolors, but how many layers are they limited to?
I have not. I mean, I've worked on files on here with 40, 45 layers, and I've never had an issue. So I don't know if we... I'm being honest, I don't know if we do have a limit. I'm assuming we must have some kind of limit.
There must be a limit, just because, the program will crash otherwise. But it clearly is enough for Kyle, so.
Plenty, yeah. Oh, and I didn't show you something. Here, let me go back a moment.
Yeah, sure.
So I'd made this new layer, and what I wanted to say was, for those people who were asking, well, do you dry them and then whatever? If I wanted to take, let's say, a detail brush, right? And maybe I'll use... let's try like this sort of pink color. All right. So here's the watercolor detail brush. So I'm on a new layer now.
Yep.
So I want to just do this. I'm going to come through like that. Okay, now I look at it and I say, well, all right, that's fine, but now I would like to actually kind of make some of the edges of that a little damp. All right, well, what I could do is I want to kind of combine these. I can simply merge my layers, even though they're two watercolor layers. What you can do is just merge down. Now it's one layer.
But it didn't do the watercolor effect. So
no, you're still safe. But now you can control that effect as much as you like, right? So I can actually
start to bleed it out.
Yep, I'll make this a little bigger. But here I can do stuff like this. So now, yeah, this is, the amount of control you have over these effects is really, really crazy. So I've just taken these two layers, I've merged them together. Wow. Right?
Yeah.
I can't see the chat, so I hope people are getting excited.
No, people are really good. Jimmy is saying, I'm putting an Amber Alert out for Fresco. He's like, release this immediately. He's like, let Fresco free.
But to be able to do something like this, the amount of control this gives an illustrator over every single little effect that they want without causing it to be complex. That's the thing, is you want you to work quickly and have fun and still be spontaneous.
Yep.
So I'm not sitting here having to fiddle and fidget with all kinds of controls. No. I'm just painting and drawing.
Just having fun. Yeah. And somebody had mentioned to me the last time I showed them is that this would be great for kids. And I was well, yeah, it's great for kids, but it turns adults into children, and that's even more delightful.
Yes, that's so true. And when you're in a room for the first time with a bunch of people who haven't seen it, a bunch of grown-ups, and you just hand it to them and they start playing with the watercolors or the oils, that's it. They're done. Yep. It's an hour of just and it's really fun.
We have 8 minutes, I think, to show off the oils.
Let's do it.
And then we'll show off the vectors, because there's a ton of questions now in the chat. I know.
We need 2 hours.
I know. We got 12 more minutes. I'm sorry, 18 more minutes.
All right,
so we got about 8 minutes to show off the oils, and then we'll get into vectors, because people are really losing their minds now.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Lots of questions about the vectors. We'll get to that, but let's look at the oils first.
Yeah, so here's so with the oils, again, keeping it simple, right? We want to keep it as simple as possible.
Yep.
So all we have is a slider for how much the paint will mix. That's it. And if the flow will control the thickness of the paint.
Yep, that makes sense.
So if I've got the flow cranked all the way up to 100, it's going to be chunky, ooey gooey paint.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Like super
I feel like
chunk.
I can just like grab that, like.
And you just blend it all together.
Whoa, look at that blending.
Yeah. Lovely, love. It's so fun. Okay.
Out of control.
Yeah, that's the chunky, thick paint. But you don't always want to do that, so why don't we just reduce the flow here?
Oh my goodness.
Okay. And now what I can do, and by the way, I'm painting with a brush that's almost 400 pixels.
What? So that's a huge brush that you're actually working.
Zero lag.
Oh my gosh, there's no lag. And actually, I just got an update. We only have 13 minutes because they have to end a little early. Just so you know. But you got 5.
We're good. I can cover this pretty fast.
You can do it.
And there'll be more demos to come. Don't worry.
Yeah, this won't be the last time you'll see Fresco.
No,
trust me.
Of course not. We've got plenty to talk about.
So how? I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Look at that.
It's so fun. We have different categories in here for you. So for the oils, we have flat brush, round brush, filbert, just being like a really bristly.
I love this filbert. It looks like hair to me. Like
yeah, it's wispy and it's you can see the stamp shape here, right?
Yeah.
But what we're designing these on is real brushes people use for real oil painting, and so like you get this really nice bristle shape here. It's very easy to control. And some of you might be seeing that with light pressure, I've got the canvas texture coming through, right? And just so you know, this canvas texture is shared amongst many of the oil Photoshop brushes that I made that you can import. So you can combine working with the real oil brushes and then with Photoshop oil brushes that you have, and the texture will remain consistent across. And that's a really nice thing as well.
Because you simulated oil in the pixel brushes. Like you tried to approximate.
As best I could. I mean, it's nothing like this.
Yeah.
This is truly.
But they'll work together.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Really smart of you.
Thanks.
You're like, thanks. I thought of it myself.
Yeah, just trying to be smart. All right, so I'll crank that all the way up again. We'll reduce the mixing now. So by reducing the mixing, I can paint over an area with no mixing whatsoever.
Oh yeah, it just went straight through.
Yep. But then I can, of course, increase it a little bit and come along the sides, and we'll pick up a little bit of what's there and just, yeah.
Now, can you talk a little bit about the clear brush? Because I know there's you can either reload your brush color or not.
Oh, right. Of course. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
People we've talked to in research, and this is a really great thing, have told us there are 2 different ways they want to paint with digital oils. They want it so that they can either have the paint be reloaded, the color that you've selected will be reloaded every time you lift the stylus up.
Yeah, each time it's a new,
Right.
new
so
stroke
that's what
of
this
green.
is by default. So
Yeah.
every time I'm taking off and then as I paint more, it gets,
Blendy.
picks up more of the color, and that's fine, right? Other people say, well, if I'm working with real oils and traditional, in a real world environment, or whatever you want to call it, then the colors are going to stay on the brush.
Yeah.
So we've made that possible. All you have to do is turn off reload color. That's it.
Cool.
So now I've got this color, and as I come in here and paint with it, see, it retains that color.
Wow.
I can come over and reload my brush to yellow.
Right?
I'll come in here and paint, and as I start to pick up some of the green, the next time I make a stroke, it's got both.
And that's crazy to me to see this color puck right there and then see what you're laying down and it not being the same color.
Sure.
It's just awesome and kind of...
And what's cool is, so like you have some yellow, some red, and maybe we'll do a little like a purple kind of color here, like that, okay?
Yeah.
And I'll grab a big brush. Let's do the glaze brush and just crank it up. 500 pixels. I'm gonna turn the mixing all the way up, and we have the reload color off.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not gonna reload color.
Very exciting.
All right, and so if I come in and I just start painting here, and then pull it over,
Oh.
it's taking with it
Oh,
the
man.
yellow,
And then
the
your
pink,
next
the purple.
stroke.
Next one's gonna have those in it, and yeah. So that way you can be using multiple colors,
once.
which is the same as how you would paint with oils, if you were intentionally picking up more than one color at a time, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what you get.
That's so cool. And you all do that just with the reload brush color inside that little
That's
setting.
it. So you just turn it on or off.
Freaking
And we
magic.
even went as far as to control pressure dynamics, velocity dynamics, your angle of your brush. So like Photoshop brush controls, but for live brushes.
Wow.
And what's cool about that, if I could jump back for just a moment and talk about
please.
the watercolor, is that, for example, with the spatter, okay? Let's say I want a more dense concentration of spatter, I can simply open my brush controls and control the spacing
Oh, wow.
and just make it a lot tighter spacing.
So you can customize the live brushes even.
Yeah,
Like,
so then I've got tight spacing
Wow.
of spatter that's all wet,
That's beautiful.
which is just crazy.
All right, so vectors.
So vectors, let's do it.
Oh my goodness. Can you believe it?
we're-
Vector and raster in the
This
same
is
app.
the thing, there's so much to cover. So we have the raster, the Photoshop brushes, we've got the default pencil, we've got the pen, more things to come there that I can't mention. And then we've got our vector brushes, and the vector brushes are just, they're glass,
Yeah.
How much smoother could they be?
Yeah.
So, here, and also we didn't talk about this, but line smoothing is available for vector and raster brushes.
Oh, so if you got shaky hand, like I do, I know I got shaky hand.
And like if I crank that really high up, one of the things I love to do is if I've got to make a really long curvilinear passage, and I just zoom out and get it so lovely, and that line smoothing makes a huge difference,
Yeah, it
right?
does.
I'll zoom in here, and why don't we just? I'll draw a little something,
Okay.
and then we'll just zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom and zoom.
Forever.
Yeah, and you'll see how.
So if you
infinitely
don't know
scalable
anything
it is.
about vectors, vectors are made out of math, and that's how they do the magic that they do. So a regular brush is built on a stamp, and that stamp is usually just like a pixel image that gets repeated over and over again. Now vectors, it's literally that equation like slope. You remember trying to learn slope in school, don't you? Like graphing points on a map, actually, just like on a map. Excuse me. So these are literally just math. And so that's how it scales infinitely, is that it just knows where these points are, and it just remembers the relationship between them as you scale. So that's always crisp and beautiful, and your kitty cat never gets pixelated.
Correct. And I have to say, it's so difficult to communicate how responsive these feel. You have to draw with them to see for yourself. Like the way I'm drawing right now, the amount of pressure I'm using is so perfectly interpreted.
It feels real.
It's just perfect. Like I'm using faint, tiny, skinny little lines,
Yeah.
and the responsiveness of the pencil and the detail. Look how tiny. These are the faintest little lines, and it's just picking it up really, really well. I spent so much time getting this to feel good, and it's incredible how good that feels. So why don't I then give it a little tail? There we go.
good.
It's probably too long. Who cares?
But I'm still seeing some good texture in that too, even though it's a vector.
So watch this. Here we go.
Zoom,
Here we go.
and zoom,
Here we go.
and zoom.
Here we go. 8,000% zoom, excuse me, and
Can you turn on one of those layers
now
behind
we're at the
it?
max,
And then we'll see the
12,800.
pixels?
Sure,
maybe?
why not? Let's do it.
Oh, let's see.
I'll
There's
go-
no real pixels there, huh?
Because I'm at 8,000%.
Whoa!
There we go.
So you can kind of see the difference between
Turn
the two
this off and
different
turn
styles.
this on as the watercolor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's really no comparison. Here's the pixel level.
Yeah. Wow.
Let's see if I can find an area that has more of a division of, yeah.
So the pixels and the vectors are going to show up on different layers, right?
Mm-hmm. When you select a vector brush and start drawing, if you haven't already created a layer, it'll automatically create a vector layer for you to keep them separated, and that's really convenient. Now, I'll delete my oils, and I'll merge my vector layer down. So I've actually just taken this art and converted it from vector
into
pixel art.
Ooh.
See?
Yeah.
Now it's pixels.
Wow, immediately.
And, yeah, so, but what that means, of course, is that I could then take a watercolor brush.
And make it all mushy.
Yeah, just get it all. Whoop.
So we got about 3
like
minutes
that. There it
left.
goes.
About 3 minutes left here in Better Know a Brush Fresco Edition. So just a quick roundup. Kyle, I'll let you just doodle and have fun.
Sure, and I should quickly point out we do have the brushes from Draw. Those of you who are
yeah.
fans of Draw. Here they
All
are,
the different
taper,
styles.
flat, chisel, basic terminal, and that taper brush is addictive if anybody hasn't used it. I'll just grab this and there we go.
Oh gosh, it's so good. Like just the different sort of attitude and the control you have with the Apple Pencil.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So you're going to be able to export vectors and pixels out of Adobe Fresco. It is not released yet. We're still working on it, so please stay tuned. But we will get this app to you as soon as we can. And of course, it's got always the most wonderful brushes by Kyle Webster, all loaded up in there. But you can use those brushes today in Photoshop. Don't forget that. Does anybody else have any final questions? We got about 3, maybe 2 minutes left. So maybe I'll just let you doodle and
Just go to that 12,800 again.
It's so gorgeous. So like, yeah, if you wanted to make that into a logo, you can export that, put it in Illustrator, and then go further. You should know that there's no pen tool in here. So it's not going to be for point editing.
No, it's different. No, this is all about organic drawing. It's the drawing experience. You're drawing with vectors. You're drawing with vector brushes. You're not going in and editing, anchor points and things like that. It's a different experience.
No, but if you want to do that, we'll let you export it and have some fun in Illustrator.
Of course, just export it to Illustrator. Why not?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for sticking with us on this. And we tried to get through as much as we could, right?
There's so much in Fresco.
Yeah.
There is so much. So yeah, I mean, thank you so much for watching today. This was Better Know a Brush with the man, Kyle Webster. Adobe Fresco is...
And Renee.
Oh, come on. Adobe Fresco is on its way this year. So please stay tuned. We'll get it to you as soon as we can.
Yes. Thank
Kyle,
you, everybody.
It was a real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. That was great.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.